Welcome everyone to the all-new 2025 Toyota Crown Signia, and this is a pretty fun vehicle and a unique vehicle as it's a wagon really from Toyota, and it's blending this space in between the mainstream Toyota lineup as well as the more expensive Lexus brand. And I think it's doing a interestingly good job at this while also being a little bit of a confusing product from the Toyota brand. And let's talk about it because this is definitely an interesting vehicle. So of course, if you haven't checked out a full tour and review, we have a full hybrid system. You can only get one hybrid powertrain on this Toyota Crown. We have an eCVT all-wheel drive, so electric motors in the rear axle, around 240-ish horsepower. We have a few different drive modes to select from, some eco, normal, sport, custom. I like to keep it in eco normal personally for the best MPG, and it still drives pretty comfortably. And of course, we have plenty of configurable gauge cluster stuff. You can make 2 gauges. You could have one singular gauge. I've gone in depth with this infotainment and gauge cluster system in a lot of other Toyota products. Not the biggest fan of it. I think it's a lot of clutter, but definitely go check out a review for that. Pretty much same stuff with the infotainment system, really nothing much going on, you know. Otherwise, let's go take this Crown Signia out on a drive. So of course, in our center console area over here, we have this very Prius-like shifter, so we can pop it into drive, of course. We can also pop it into neutral, and we're going to unlock our cameras here. For our reversing cameras, we can change the color of our vehicle, which is pretty fun. And our views here going into drive is going to unlock even more cameras though. So you can pop your camera view open, you can turn automatic camera on, so every time you come to a stop, the camera will turn on, and there are so many different views you can kind of cycle through in here, which is pretty cool. So they're really crystal clear. We also have a rear view camera as well, which we're able to wash. So if you press your camera system here, go into a reverse, for example, you're able to wash those cameras via that button, or you can wash your headlights via that button as well. So right off the bat, you know, this is a Toyota hybrid. So how is it like to drive? Well, I think it's really interesting. So it drives more like a car. So if you get out of a Camry, for example, and get into this, it drives like that. It doesn't drive like a RAV4. It doesn't drive like a Highlander. It doesn't drive like an SUV. It drives like a car. And that's my main thing. If you blindfolded me, put me in this in a Camry, they're pretty similar in terms of their overall driving dynamics. Now, one thing you will note though between the two vehicles, for example, is this is quieter. There's a little bit more sound deadening in here versus a typical Toyota, but not as much as a Lexus. So you're kind of seeing that in-between standpoint there. But the main excelling areas of this vehicle are just cruising along. It's really not a performer. It's not a sporty vehicle. It's not a dynamic vehicle either in that sense. It's just meant to be a comfortable, quiet, reliable, just cargo family hauler and just comfortable highway cruiser that's always going to get you from A to B reliably with good MPG and a low fuel price at the pump. So that's really all of the main hallmarks, I would say, of this all-new Toyota Crown Signia. And it also looks pretty unique and interesting while doing so. Just to add in that fact as well. But just driving around town, you know, very light, but very light steering. It's not super direct. There's a lot of just play, I would say, in the steering. But once you start getting into that turn in, Toyotas have this very characteristic feel when you kind of turn into a corner where it gives you a little bit more turn in from this rack. But, you know, again, comfortable cruising vehicle. And this is the nicely appointed cabin as well. We have plenty of nice materials, leathers. You know, it's not as nice as a Lexus, but it's pretty nice. I like we have a lot of tactile controls, all for our climate systems. Nice, easy to access, easy to reach buttons. The touchscreen's easy to reach from the steering, from where your hands are on the steering wheel, and it's pretty responsive and quick as well. So I do quite like that. And of course, when you're driving around here with a full battery pack, you can pop it into EV mode, which I'll do right now. And you can see under very light throttle applications, we can drive around in EV mode. Pause for you guys to hear the whir of the electric motors, but you know, if you get a little bit too quick or you press the accelerator too far, it's going to deactivate EV mode. But I am still in it, and I've been able to go pretty far in EV mode, which is pretty cool. But you know, you kick it onto throttle, gets right out of EV mode, and that gas engine seamlessly kicks in as part of this system. Toyota's really good with these hybrid systems. I really was impressed with this hybrid system in the Camry, just of how inobtrusive it is. You never know when the engine's turning off or on. It's acceleration in sport mode for you guys. It's pretty quick for what it is. It's around 240-ish horsepower, like I mentioned, but you know, this is not meant to be a quick vehicle. 0 to 60 is, you know, 7+ seconds. That's perfectly adequate for 99% of the people on the road these days. So, you know, it just gets that job done pretty well. And around town, very, very comfortable. The only complaint I would say on the comfort side of this vehicle is that I think these 21-inch wheels just might be a little bit too big. You have a decent sidewall on these tires, but it does kind of reverberate some stuff through the floor, the road into the cabin just a little bit, but I think it's well damped to the point where it kind of gets washed out pretty well. Again, really light steering through that corner. It's just pretty slow steering rack, which is good, you know, for the people I think this vehicle is targeted towards, the market. They don't really want a quick, direct steering rack that, you know, if you're making a lot of quick movements, it's just still going to be a nice, smooth, comfortable experience. We do have automatic brake hold as well when you come to a stop, which is nice. And this giant panoramic glass roof above us is really nice, but you know, it doesn't open, which is a little bit frustrating, I think. But it is nice how big it is and how much light it brings into the cabin, because this is a pretty low roof line, I would say. My head's almost hitting the roof. This vehicle is pretty low in terms of its roof height, even though it is a little bit higher off the ground than a typical sedan or wagon would be, because it's kind of like this crossover vehicle. And again, other things to note, we don't have a heads-up display on here, which is pretty interesting. I think that would have been a nice addition, but you know, that might be stepping too much on Lexus's toes for the Toyota team there. And again, you know, just great praise for this hybrid powertrain for being a fantastic hybrid system in itself. It's so seamless in its application. I like how you can use this energy flow monitor to see what's happening with your brakes, as well as with your whole system. And now I have the PDA turned on, and what will happen is it can actually sense vehicles in front of you, and it will come to a stop using the deceleration assist, which you can turn on or off through this center screen, which is very difficult to use if you've never used the system. Unfortunately, it may not look difficult at first, but look at all of these acronyms. Toyota, what is all of this stuff? I mean, I can understand it because I stare at this stuff all day for my own entertainment, but people getting into this are going to need to take like a course. There's DA, OAA, SA, the sensitivity of the PDA system. I don't think people are really explaining this well to, I think, a lot of buyers, and it's a lot of great features that this car has. We have rear cross traffic alert, rear cross, I think pedestrian alert, rear, there's so much stuff in here. It's kind of mind-boggling, but it all does work pretty well. I just wish it was labeled better and kind of just taught better to a lot of consumers, or just put into the infotainment system instead of having it out all stuffed into the screen where it's a little bit clumsy to use most of the time. Okay guys, we're going to head out onto the highway here. Let's pop it into sport mode to just see what kind of acceleration we get. You know, not the quickest vehicle. We do have paddle shifters if you want to attempt to shift this eCVT. There's the acceleration here under full throttle. And you know, this is not like those more naturally aspirated engined CVTs in the sense where they've been programmed a lot these days to act as regular 8-speed or 7-speed automatics. This is still like a CVT. It revs itself out to get the maximum power out of this engine. But you have to remember, this vehicle is only using this engine to power the front wheels. The rear wheels are driven by electric motors, so it's a little bit of an interesting powertrain experience. But I would say sport mode definitely gives you a little bit more throttle response, prioritizes the engine a little bit more versus the electric motors, and just delivers all that power at once. So that's nice. These other modes, I think, vary power distribution between the electric motors and the gas engine. Out here on the highway, it's a pretty comfortable vehicle. I do have to say the suspension softens up a little bit more, I would say, versus when it's on side roads. I think it feels a little bit stiffer on side roads just because there's more bumps, at least in my particular area. This obviously could be totally different to where you live, but out here on the highway, I think it's a little bit more of a area that suits this vehicle more so. Now, one thing to keep in mind though that I've noticed, if you're traveling on higher speed highways and you want to maintain that speed, this vehicle just doesn't appreciate, I wouldn't say, or just isn't a vehicle that likes to go quickly. It's a more efficient leaning vehicle. So out here on the highways, I really like to use the Toyota Safety Sense 3.0 systems and just pop it into full radar adaptive cruise control here, honestly, and just let it do its own thing. So out here on the highway, on the right hand side of the steering wheel, all we have to do is pop it into that said mode, and I already have my lane keep assist on, lane tracing assist, all that stuff. So it's following the lanes via the cameras and the radar. It knows the vehicles in front of us, and it does a pretty good job, actually, I would say, at it out here on the highway. We have easy distance control, and I like that. And if, let's say if there's a vehicle in front of you, you're going on highway speed, you're going on a downhill, it's going to recognize that, and it might actually just shut the engine off automatically just to save the power, even though that it normally does that in normal operation, since this is a Toyota hybrid. But it's kind of a little bit more of a smarter system on this radar cruise control side, where it can do it itself, which is quite cool as well of a feature. Gosh, I think I was incorrect, guys. It does have lane change assist. So the Crown Signia does have lane change assist as well as part of these functions, which is quite nice. You can either just hold the turn indicator or fully press it and it will change lanes for you. Of course, you have to keep your hand on the wheel and monitor your surroundings, of course, unlike some other systems which are a little bit more advanced like Super Cruise. But this is nice that this vehicle has it. Again, a nice elevated feature that you might not get in a lot of Toyota products, but you can get it in the Crown and of course Lexus products. So it's, again, that blending of classes here. So guys, is it worth the 52 grand that this particular one is asking? I'm not too sure. It's definitely an expensive ask for this car. It's unique, but you have to remember, again, the purposes of it. It's delivering a more premium Toyota experience and a more traditional Toyota experience. They're not doing anything groundbreaking on purpose here. They are putting in a reliable, long-lasting powertrain. They're putting in buttons, hard buttons that you can use that aren't going to be, you know, accessed by a subscription down the road, or gonna be breaking all if they're all, you know, built into a screen. It's just, everything here is meant to work, it's meant to last, it's meant to be efficient, and it's meant to be a spacious, just comfortable all-around vehicle. And all those points, I think it does very, very well. I think even for this fully loaded version, it shouldn't even be over 50 grand, I would say. But, you know, where they're positioning this vehicle, I think that's okay. Just have to remember there are so many Toyota and even Lexus SUVs now that choosing between some of them might be a little bit difficult. So that's why I always say go out in person, test drive these vehicles, and once you start digging into them a little bit more and understanding each of their purposes a little bit more, I think they make more sense out of the lineup. But nonetheless, I'd say as an average buyer, it is definitely a little bit confusing. As anyways, guys, thank you guys for joining me on another video here on Allcarnews, and as always, stay tuned for more coming soon. Cheers.